Hi, Brian.
Heather, how are you?
I'm doing well. We made it.
Finally, finally. Hey, there's a
Oh,
little. Oh, there you are. I see you.
there I
Hi.
am. Hi, nice to see you.
Same
Should,
here.
should I start recording from now and then we'll just tweak it afterwards?
Yeah,
You can
absolutely.
do that?
That's awesome.
Okay. All right, okay, not a
Perfect.
problem. I hope
Perfect.
this works out the way we would like it to.
Yeah.
All right, it looks like we're rocking and rolling.
Awesome. Well, great
Okay,
to
so
see you again.
good to see. I don't see me anymore, but I'm assuming you are, so we're fine.
I do see you.
Okay, awesome.
I'm gonna change one thing here because it's reduces your level every time I talk, and it's annoying. And
Okay.
if I can remember where that setting is. Oh well, I'll just try not to talk over you. All right. Well, we were talking about getting together to talk about your great new book,
Yes, thank you.
discovering New York craft spirit boom, discovering the New York craft spirits boom. So,
That
but before we managed to set this up, we actually got to meet in person, which was great.
was a nice bonus. Yes.
That rum event was great, wasn't it?
I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. Paul was amazing. I mean, it was just altogether a fabulous experience. Thank you so much. I guess everything happens for a reason, right?
That's right. Yeah,
So the little hiccup that would not have worked out, and everything came together really well.
yeah. It's a funny story actually. You and I know it, but so you guys were trying to send me a book and it didn't come, and they're like, I don't know. We sent it. We'll send another one. The next one didn't come, so and then I said, actually, I'm going to be in Midtown for this rum event, and you're like, what rum event? I want to go.
Exactly, because I'm all about the rum. There's nothing wrong with supporting the spirits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we went to. I spoke about it a little bit on the last podcast, but this rum event that Paul Packle runs, and it's all about promoting great quality rums and tasting them and learning about them, which was awesome.
Yes, it is.
And
It clearly, I feel like with spirits and just learning as far as cultures and things, it always is very enriching. But it really does make the world a very interesting place when you learn the history of things and why people do what they do and how they do it is fascinating. At least it's fascinating to me.
and me too, and me too, and you meet the most interesting people doing this stuff.
I so. I think so. I bet you, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That was a fun day at Keen's Steakhouse, and
Yeah.
I ended up hanging around in the pub for a while with some folks afterwards, and then a friend of mine came by too, and we had a grand old time.
Sounds like a good time.
It was,
Life is short. Well, we like to have moments like that.
yeah. So, well, tell us your story. You're originally from Grenada, right?
Yes, interesting tale. Came to Grenada, came to New York from Grenada in '95. Decided I was going to come here to study architecture. Did my master's in environmental technology, and I decided to buy a house because it just seemed like a reasonable thing to do. Right after getting my first full-time job as an environmental consultant, and a friend of mine who was also from Grenada, she worked for a promotion company. She owned a promotion company because she worked for a pretty large distributor, and she needed her brands promoted in Long Island, which is where I lived at the time. And I thought, you know what, this could be something really very interesting. Reach out to her, and I'm like, okay, it really was just supposed to be a favor, and like I said, it lasted 9 years
Mm.
because I really loved it. I like connecting with people, and like we just mentioned, just learning about different things and the reason why people do different things, and telling those stories and seeing how people connect to those stories, and especially if they enjoy the product. I mean, that's always a really great bonus. But yes, it was, and now here we are,
Yeah.
evolving that from the tastings to creating all the tastes in New York to being inspired to write the book, and yeah, it's been an interesting journey, very interesting journey.
Yeah, yeah. So you worked as a brand ambassador mostly on Long Island or all around?
I would say mostly at that time. That was until about 2009. So it was me being in Long Island was a huge benefit because if you're familiar, as I'm sure you are, with the Hamptons, when the Hamptons opens, it's very seasonal. And a lot of the brand ambassadors that most of those companies had were New York City based or other locations other than Long Island. So having people who had a vehicle that was not and even just a distance, because going out to Montauk, for example, I used to live in Medford. easily without traffic, that was about 2 to 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Or not to mention factoring if you had somebody coming in from New York City. So I was always very fortunate to land those events. And I remember when Bacardi launched their Mojito campaign, I was one of those people for that entire summer. I mean, you're everybody's best
Oh, were you
friend.
on the camper, the bus?
No, no, no. I did again. That wasn't necessary because I had my own vehicle, but
Oh,
did a lot of event actually out at Gurney's, on the beach and a lot of different special events that they had at the Grey Goose House because Grey Goose, Bacardi owns Grey Goose.
right.
That is how I believe that works, or they're part of the same general portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was always tremendous fun, just going out and connecting with people and telling them about the brand. And I mean, it's been a really, really fabulous time.
The Grey Goose House. I didn't know about that.
Yes, yes. If memory serves me correctly, I think that was in East Hampton.
Nice.
A lot of the special events and things they had, it was there. And it was just, and a lot of the charity events, boy, did they ever do a lot of charity events. And again, just because of my proximity, and I love what I did, and I was really passionate about it. And, people feel that and they appreciate it. You show up to work and you're enthusiastic and you're happy no matter what I'm doing during the day. Like, I always had the energy for that.
Mm-hmm.
I really did. And I still do to this day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Brand ambassador sounds like a fun job.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you started a company in New York. It's called All the Taste of New York, right? What's that about?
Yeah, so I was in Florida in South Beach with my mom a few years ago, and if you've ever been to South Beach, Ocean Drive, all the restaurants are lined up out there, and it could be very overwhelming. You can't figure out where you want to eat. So I remember saying to her, it's like, well, why do we have to decide, just to eat in one place? Why can't we just have what we'd like to have at each restaurant? And so we had appetizer at one place, entree at the second, dessert at the third. And I remember that was in October. And in December, it occurred to me after having a business meeting with someone who told me that they did the less formal version, which would be like a food for, I think it was in Little Italy or Chinatown at the time. And I'm like, what if I did the more formal version of that, like I did with my mom? And really create that experience for individuals and take all the work out of it, come up with the neighborhood selections, the restaurant selections, the menus, and just make it simple and uncomplicated. And that was how All the Taste in New York was born.
Cool. So you take a group of people around to, what, 3 different restaurants in the course of the evening?
Exactly that. It's very specific: appetizer, entree, and dessert, and they're timed event. They're not. So, for example, Match.com had been one of my first clients, and it lent itself really well to dating. Because, like I like to say, you don't find yourself in a hostage situation if it's not really working out.
Right.
You have to get up and move, because and even for corporations, they like that experience as well, because many times the people don't know each other if it's a biannual meeting, for example, and they're coming from different states. So you're not sitting in the same place, with the same people around you for 2 hours. You have to move. And like I say, if you don't move, you don't eat. So, the next course, and everything is timed. Every course is treated like a specific reservation. So, being late is not really an option, and we move together. And we really just keep it simple and uncomplicated. A lot of people are like, oh my God, 3 courses is so complex. Not at all. They're staffed events. That's what we're here for.
Nice.
To make it it's smooth, it's seamless. We're connecting with the wait staff. They know exactly what needs to be done. And we're there to just make sure that everybody has a great time.
And does everybody have some cocktails in the evening, during the evening?
Yeah, of course. I mean, what would be the point? To this moment, I don't. Well, the only group that didn't drink is because they were underage. I was doing it for the au pairs in America. So for all those nannies that came from Europe, and most of them were under 21, so it's like, all right, okay, fine. But aside from that, absolutely not.
So is that something you coordinate ahead of time, or they choose whatever they like?
Everything is coordinated ahead of time. There are no surprises, and you also pay ahead of time. I need to know if anybody has any dietary restrictions. I need to know if anybody has mobility issues. We have had, actually next month, we're going to have our 4th, 70th birthday party. And, it works well for many different age groups. As long as you have that joy for food, it works for you. And I always say it's not for everybody, but the people who it's for, they absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it.
Oh, it
So
sounds like a lot of fun.
yeah, it absolutely is. And I square away everything well beforehand. So you know exactly what you're getting at each course. There really are no surprises. And if anybody, like I said, have any allergies or dietary restrictions, we address that well before.
Cool. Well, let's talk about the book, Discovering the New York Craft Spirits Boom. How'd you get interested in that?
So part of all the Taste in New York, what we would do is put together large-scale food and wine festivals. I'll work with restaurants, and having been a brand ambassador for so many years, I had a lot of different relationships in the spirit, beer, wine industry. So I'm like, you know what? Let me see if I can leverage these relationships and have something fun that would be beneficial to everyone. Um, a company that was hired to do Astoria's Restaurant Week, they were trying to come up with a way to have a launch party, something to just engage people, to bring people over to Astoria for the restaurant week. And I thought, you know what, guys, why not do a food festival and have that be the launch party? And, it is what I do. I've done it numerous times. I do it well. And so they connected with the restaurants, and I decided instead of using these major brands as I've worked with over the years, why not reach out to smaller companies instead? Let's see who's out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's about promoting local, so let's see if we could really do this local all the way. And frankly, I had no idea that so many craft distillers existed. And that frankly really surprised me because I consider myself to be someone who has my ear to the pulse of what's going on and somebody in the business. And the fact that I didn't know that this existed, I thought there were probably a lot of other people who were also interested who had no idea. So why not take the time to document this movement? Because that's what I realized it was. It wasn't just random happenings. Things actually happened that allowed all of this to take place. And with all the Taste in New York also being a small company and these guys being small companies, they're brothers and friends and husbands and wives. They're not these huge conglomerates, which is what you would generally tend to think of as a spirit brand.
Right.
And so I figured, if we could all collectively rise together, then why not?
Mm-hmm.
And that is what, that's how I came up with Discovering the New York Craft Spirits Boom.
It's great. Well, there's so much to talk about. I mean, really, a lot of it comes from the sort of eat local and buy local movement, if we want to call it that, which is so fun and exciting, and it's great to see that these tiny little companies of 2 or 5 or 10 people can really thrive and make really cool, interesting products, and the public really responds to them.
Well, the biggest reason that this took off was because of the Farm Distillery Act. And it changed the licensing structure immensely from something like, if I remember, like 60 or 65,000 to 1,500. And just
The
by the
licensing fee, the initial licensing fee, right?
yes, yes. And so when you're a small entity, every single penny counts. When you're distilling spirits, it's a very, very, very capital intense operation. And so to be able to have that essentially at the very beginning, to not have to endure such a financial burden.
Right.
And you can then use those resources into figuring out all the multitude of other things that you have to figure out, because believe me, they are enormous. It's helpful. And I'm pretty out of the 30 people that I've interviewed, I would probably say 25 of them, because they are certainly amongst the newer, given that this bill passed in 2007, they were really amongst the ones that were like, absolutely, this is something that we would consider, because now it seems more attainable from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, let's just talk a little more specifically about what it is for people who don't know, because this law is specific to New York State, although some other states have similar laws.
Yes, they do, which is why I feel like the whole craft movement has taken off really throughout the United States. But the rate that New York State is going, so when I finished writing this book in April, and we're now having this conversation in September, in April there were 70 craft distillers, now there are 84.
Yeah.
So we're moving
and
at
if we go back 2 years before that, it was probably 30 or 40.
Exactly, not even 40. Exactly that. It was just it really is something that absolutely just took off. But part of the incentive is for the economy in New York State, for the agriculture, and there are a lot of part of being a craft distiller is that you have to source at least 75% of the material from New York.
Right.
So it's a huge boom to the farmers, the guys that are growing the grains. And, we have people now with the, it's creating a lot of other industry as well,
Yeah.
which is really, really a wonderful thing all by itself.
Absolutely. It affects everything from trucking and then the barrel makers and you could go on and on.
Absolutely.
Excuse me, just 1 second. My dog is scratching at the door. She's gonna ruin my audio.
Oh.
Come on in. She follows me everywhere I go.
I actually have the same, and I closed my door because she has turf wars with the cat, and I'm like, today is not a day that I want turf wars, so I close the door so I don't hear any scratching just yet. So hopefully it'll be okay.
Usually I have enough sense to make sure the dog's in the room before I close the door and start recording because I know what's going to happen.
Yep. No, I'm keeping hope alive on this side. We're good to go.
Well, yeah, I mean, just there's, I don't know how many distilleries you talked about in the book exactly, but there's many examples of this. But the Orange County distilleries, I know those guys, and that's a great story because this farm was in this guy's family for 5 generations, and it's hard to make it as a farmer these days, especially a small farmer. And he just found a great way to put that land to use and to make some cool stuff.
I do really love their story as well. A couple weeks ago, I did the farmers market with them because they will usually be at the Union Square Farmers Market on a Friday. And so I did a book signing next to their booth, which was perfect. So, you could do the signing, find out about the book, and then do a tasting, and it all worked. And I try to do that as much as I possibly can. But stories like them, it's so impressive to me the way, and I'm not sure how much you know about their operation, but they know where every single product is coming from that goes into the gin, that goes into the vodka. I mean, absolutely every single thing.
And most of it comes from the land, from his
Everything.
property. Everything does.
All, absolutely. It's all.
Including the water that comes out of the ground.
It is really, and it's just really heartening to see that. And, there are challenges and there are all these other things, but, to see these people just like, okay, well, this is what we have. And what can we do for, from this that would make a huge difference financially and just all the way around. And it works. It really, really does work.
And unfortunately, a lot of the farmers around there are not making it as farmers, and they're selling off the land, and they make mansions and little neighborhoods.
Exactly.
So it's great to see what these guys are doing with their property, and now the next thing is that there was a new law that just came into effect November or December 2014, where now they're allowed to sell cocktails in their tasting rooms. That's awesome.
The cocktails are awesome. Around when that law passed, I was visiting Hudson Valley Distillers, and they were in the process because they knew that it was just a matter of time that law was going to pass, and they were in the process of building their their cocktail shack. I can't remember exactly what it is. It's an area just exclusively dedicated to that because there are a lot of people in New York who feel, and I think in every state that has craft spirits. There's a lot of pride when you know the person. Like, you really get to press the flesh or press the fruit in this particular case and, drink the spirits. And so these places are really becoming destinations, just like vineyards have been for years.
Right.
So now to be able to welcome them and, you can have this whole experience. Because the reality is yes, there are many people who would drink spirits straight, but that's probably not the majority. And so to be able to create that experience with the cocktails, with the ambiance of the location that you're in, it's a home run for everybody.
Yeah, and not to mention the distillers themselves, because it's an immediate cash infusion, which they need.
Which is huge.
They need that because if you're making bourbon and you start making it today, you're not going to be able to sell it for at least
I was going to
24 months at least.
exactly, exactly. Those guys that are waiting for product, that's a welcome break.
It's great, and yeah, it's great for the economy, and apparently our Governor Cuomo is what did he call himself? The most friendly. I forget what he said exactly. The most.
The booze friendly, yes, there was something like along the lines of like the most booze friendly executive. Actually,
Right.
I haven't put it in the back of the book,
Yeah.
but yes, it is true, and I could only hope that those after he is gone on, would really continue to champion the cause, because it really is very exciting. It
It,
really is exciting.
it sure is, and well, we can't talk about this without talking about Tuttletown. And well, you were just there the other day. What was you went
I was,
back for?
but
What were you doing up there?
was actually like an industry appreciation day where we did the tour, and I got to sit with Ralph for a while, which is always fun because I feel like in many ways people see him as a godfather of this. He was certainly amongst those who really championed to get those laws passed. And so I never tire of listening to these stories. I really don't. The business and their stories and the challenges and the hurdles. And then we were able to have a cocktail, and just it was a fun day, as it always is. Absolutely awesome.
Oh, I bet. So yeah, Ralph, he was one of the guys that got these laws passed, or he championed them, or appealed for them. What's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah,
Lobbied for them.
lobbied, yeah, himself and the guys from Black Dirt Distillery, Jason and Jeremy, and you have Finger Lakes Distilling Company, that's Brian McKenzie, and then Montezuma Winery. I mean, all of these guys have been around for a very, very long time. Bill Martin from Montezuma, they segued into Hidden Marsh Distillery, and they now have like B Vodka and a number of different brands out there. But I don't know if it is a city thing. The further north you go, you generally don't a lot of those stories don't seem to be as mainstream, which is why writing this book was really very fascinating to me, because I found out a lot of things that were just not readily available. And even speaking about things that were not readily available, there was not even one comprehensive location that I could go to find out who the craft distillers in New York State were. Many of these guys helped me along the way, and they were the ones who would ask me. I would visit one person, and they're like, "Oh, did you see this guy up the street or this guy down the street?" And
Hmm.
like, no, I didn't even know that person existed.
Yeah.
Um, and there were many, many times they were the ones that I would go to visit someone, and they were like, "Well, who did you go to see, and who are you going to see next?" And I think one of the most fun experiences in that, I visited Albany Distilling Company,
Which one?
and
Oh
Albany
yeah,
Distilling,
yeah, yeah.
and they were in the process of opening their cask of, I think it was their rye whiskey that was aged for, I want to say 18 months, but that may be inaccurate. I, that may be slightly inaccurate. But in any event, I was on my way to Harvest Spirits to see Derek and Ashley, and they were so super excited because apparently Derek was very instrumental and was very helpful and supportive of them when they were getting their distillery together. So they asked me if I could take a flask of their product so that he could try it. So I'm like, absolutely. So I take the flask over to Harvest Spirits, and Derek is like, "Oh my God, this is awesome stuff. I feel so proud of these guys. I remember when they just started, blah, 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 blah." He goes, "Well, actually, I have a whiskey too. Who are you going to see next?" So it was the traveling whiskey flask. Actually, I can show you if you want to hold just one
Yeah,
moment.
yeah, yeah.
It was priceless. So I don't know. Now, the irony of this is that these guys were actually the last person, Millbrook,
Uh-huh.
now renamed to Conic. But if you look under it, you can see the sticker, because I had them for Copper Sea as well. That's on there. It was layers and layers and layers was just like, and it actually still has Millbrook, well, now Taconic's product in here. I feel like I have to just hold on to this for forever.
That's awesome.
It's my souvenir from my book writing. But I was just like, does this make me a distributor? Like, I'm just transporting. Like, will the cop, if he pulled me over, really believe that I'm not sipping product out of this flask? No, this is just part of my research for the book that I'm writing. But it was, yeah, it was.
That's like, have you ever heard the about the tradition in the cocktail bars in New York of the boomerang?
I can't say that I have.
It's if you're hanging out at whatever Death and Company and you say,
Right.
I'm going to employees only next, they'll say, oh, here, take this over to them, and they'll make a small little cocktail, and they'll put a like one of those rubber disposable gloves on top, and then you take that with you and you bring it to the bartender at the next bar you're going to. That's the boomerang.
Love it. Love it. The camaraderie is, and that's probably the other part of the story that was very heartwarming. Clearly, there's a camaraderie among these guys that I would probably say is second to none. Because each person that I visited told me about two or three other individuals that helped them along the way.
Right.
Somebody passed along a barrel, or an attorney, or, just information on the stills.
Mm-hmm.
They all really seem to really have taken pride in helping each other, and just picking up the phone and calling if you had a question or concern or a problem with anything. And it was really a very enriching experience all around.
Oh, cool. Well, we should talk about the fact that it's happening in urban areas too. Then, right in New York City, there's tons of distilleries now.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, in Brooklyn is home to at least 13 distillers, at least. I'm sure that number is probably different. And again, one of the things when I spoke to Ralph, because, and I bring Ralph up, when I was writing the book, and I'm hearing the many different stories, and realizing just how the business was growing, it occurred to me, you know what? Wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if I could be an asset to someone who would like to do this, and they have no idea how? So I went to Ralph, and I said, Ralph, if you would please just share some of your wisdom so that I could help make the potentially crooked paths of somebody else straight, so that if they decide that they wanted to actually enter into this business, what are the things that you can tell them? And really more plain to the fact that there are a lot of people who would probably want to do this in a metropolitan environment, like New York City, like Queens, like the Bronx. Everybody doesn't have the benefit of the acreage that you have. And really understanding the nuances between those kinds of places, because they're very, very different experiences. They're fun, but they're different.
Sure.
One of the things that he was speaking about was just like, connecting to your neighborhood and telling the story. And I think Bridget always comes to my mind because she's absolutely just so much fun. But, one of those born and bred Brooklyn, and, she's all about Brooklyn, about New York, and, just telling that story and just owning it. And this is mine. And, she named the company The Noble Experiment because it is her noble experiment. With the
that's Oni's rum for anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about. But that was actually one of my favorite pages in this book, was your talk with Ralph about you need to find a connection with the place and the neighborhood and have a story to tell if you're going to do this. It's not just you're not making a generic product in some unknown place. You have to be connected to the place and have a story to tell with your product. It was great.
Yeah, it is quite true. I mean, at the end of the day, we connect as individuals. It's great to have a product that you love, but when you get to actually know that person, you come, because that's a lot of what, even when you go to a restaurant, it's that feeling that you get when you go there. So with this, is just slightly different, but it's still part of that feeling. You got to know the story, and it's all part of this really holistic, fun experience.
Right. Yeah, well, we always say in the bar business, we're not selling drinks, we're selling an experience,
An experience, yeah.
So
sure.
The same thing with what's in the bottle,
Sure.
You want to know about, the people that made it and how it came to be and why, and makes it so much more interesting.
Yes, especially with the level of accessibility that you have to it.
Yeah.
That makes it, sure.
So can you tell? Did they make you any cocktails while you were at these places?
Of course.
Can you any memorable ones you can tell us about?
It's almost like an oxymoron because you see what ends up happening is that you show up and the hospitality is so great. It's like, well, I had to try everything.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, let's pace ourselves.
Hmm.
I was, I think probably the most surprising thing to me and fun. I thought that, okay, I just need a couple minutes or okay, maybe an hour and a half at the most. And I always preface my emails with that because I know they're busy and they have a lot of stuff going on. But that hours would seem to go by, and then it's 2 hours, and it's 3 hours, and we're drinking, and you're just connecting with the person and having a great experience.
Yeah.
But I probably some of the memories that stand out definitely at Catskills, sitting with Monty Sachs and trying all of his 9 products. It's like, okay, Monty, no worries.
Yeah, I had the same experience. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he would go on, and then even more locally, at Port Morris Distillery with Raphael, they distill Pitoro, which a lot of people don't know about. Pitoro is kind of like Puerto Rican moonshine, and it's a product that's distilled from apples.
Yeah.
And so they have their silver, and then they have their añejo, and they were doing a coquito at the time. It was not bottled. I'm actually not quite sure if that has been bottled yet. But then they had all these different flavors. And so there was like a tamarind and a pepper and, all these different elements. And you sit and you become just so absorbed in the passion and the creativity. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it was a gift that kept giving.
Hey, tell me about Hill Rock. I don't know anything about those guys except they make awesome whiskey.
Yes. So, and that's
Really great.
yeah, it's a really nice operation as well. Even the story of the house, it had, and I really do not want to butcher the details of that, so I would preface it by saying that you could certainly check out the specifics in the book. But the location where the distillery is, it was owned by a general, like a war general, I want to say in the 1900s. And boy, I know I'm butchering that because now I'm like 1918. But in any event, it was like a Revolutionary War general. You could probably fact check while I'm speaking, but it is they are growing their own product as well, and they're very mindful with the rotation and to make sure that because you obviously need to be sure that the soil isn't like just completely overwhelmed and stripped and that kind of thing, but they are very thoughtfully and creatively produced. They're one of the first guys, at least that I'm aware, that in New York anyway, that's using the Solera system to age their product,
Right.
and which is typically used for sherry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, they've won a number of medals for their product. I mean, it's a very, very impressive operation.
It's delicious. It's great whiskey.
Yeah.
And the Solera process is unusual for whiskey, but basically, you want to explain briefly what that is?
Sure. So essentially think of a triangle where you have this one cask at the top, and it increases as it goes to the bottom. So you have the wider number of casks at the bottom, and it goes smaller as you go to the top. And pretty much you have the oldest whiskey in the bottom, and you put the whiskey from one tier a little bit at a time into the other. So it's like the older whiskey is teaching the younger whiskey, and it's absorbing some of the characteristics of that younger whiskey, and to be able to take on its own style of very complex profiling, flavor profiling, and that sort of thing is really, really very, very smart, and they really do create a very superior product, I must say,
Right.
using that system for sure.
Yeah. So a little bit of old whiskey is filtered down into the newer, and so on and so on. But then the older will be refilled a little bit, so that there's always some very old whiskey, in every bottle.
In the system, yes.
And it's I think who else uses that besides sherry? Is that used with rum? Maybe not.
I don't. So if you remember when we attended the rum event, we did find out that one of the rums was aged in sherry casks.
Right.
But not traditional. I
Yeah.
don't. I think that was very much the exception and not the rule. I don't think that's traditional at all.
No, no.
I think cognac may be the only other.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yes, it may be cognac, but
Hmm.
it's definitely not rum. That part I'm pretty sure of.
Yeah. So you told me your next book may be about rum, huh?
You know, if I could get it together, I would. You know, when I wrote Discovering the New York Craft Spirits Boom, I felt so much guilt because I'm like, how can I, as a person from an island that is so steeped in history, especially where rum is concerned, write a book about spirits and not acknowledge it? But to be just completely truthful, I did the initial intention was to speak about it in a couple chapters at the end of the book. But frankly, I severely underestimated the time that it would take to get this done.
Mm.
Severely. You know, it was because you start to do these interviews and you record them.
Right.
And so you need time to be able to sit and transcribe and go through and the graphic. It takes time to do it well.
I
And
know.
you know what? If I'm going to go down the rum path, I really just need to do that well and by itself,
Right.
and just give it its own attention. So yes, that will likely be my next project.
Cool.
Uh, Either rum and Grenada, which is where I'm from, or Caribbean rum. I have not determined it yet, but it'll definitely be either one of those for sure.
Nice. And now you were telling me about the exam you were about to take, or did you take it already?
No, I'm about to.
What I don't I'm not really familiar with this.
Oh my goodness. So the CSS exam, Certified Specialist of Spirits, and it's really it's I will almost say like a deep dive into understanding the complexity, the history of every element of spirit tasting, spirit making, period. So as far as like, you know, the history of vodkas and gins and the laws in the US versus Europe, for example, because different countries have different standards. You know, why whiskey is spelled with an E and no E. And, you know, all those little nuances that if you're in the industry, you may know. But then there are a number of other spirits that, frankly, they're not as mainstream and you don't really hear that much about at all. And so it really just tests or teaches you and then tests your knowledge on a much more global basis, you know, understand the history of things. Why is juniper put in gin? You know, the reason that you use, you know, the historic reasons that bark got into different spirits, you know, and the original reasons for elixirs being created and things like that. You know, you now we drink for more pleasurable reasons, but you know, back then you realize that it was either save your life or
Mhm.
you know you could really have a really bad day drinking the water.
Yeah.
And there was a legitimate reason health wise for distilling spirits and figuring out fermentation and things like that, because you know you really could take your life in your hands by drinking water.
Imagine that.
Imagine
Drinking booze is healthier than drinking water.
better off with booze.
Not so much now, but it's a nice thought anyway.
Sure.
Well, Heather, it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
And thank you for having me. I'm happy we were finally able to get it together. So
I
that's awesome.
know.
Well, we're determined.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, I told you about that rum event. If you hear of any events, you know, let me know. I love those things.
I would be sure to. We will come together and prosper.
Awesome. Well,
Awesome.
thanks again.
Thank you.
Oh, you know what I wanted to ask you? You mentioned was it a field office with the farm license? You're allowed to have a
Ah, yes, yes,
What is
yes.
that? I haven't heard about that.
One of the things that they allowed, again, to just help with their distribution and promoting, is that whereas previously you could only sell on the farm or at the distillery, they're allowing you to have a field office, so it's just somewhere else off-site to facilitate. So you have your place upstate New York and you wanted to have a location, you know, somewhere in the city where you could move your product, you had the ability to do that.
Can you have a tasting room in that location?
That is the purpose of it. Yes, to
You can have a
taste.
tasting room and sell the product.
Yes, yes.
That
That is
is a
it.
huge. That is huge. And
It
I'm not really seeing anybody use that right now.
um, I think they are, but they're not straying very far. That is what I've begun to realize. They're not straying very far
I
from
have
the
an idea for a business
distillery.
that goes along with that. I just need the right partner.
I have, boy, do I have many that I am looking into. But and what I am realizing is that the people who do have those secondary areas are not straying very far away from the distillery at all. It's not a question of Finger Lakes to New York City, which is what my logic would be. But then
Right.
you begin to realize that there are real logistic issues that they have,
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of these guys have. And so I am actually trying to figure out how I can be an asset to many of these guys working out those logistics.
We should
The-
we should
the-
talk more about that because there's an opportunity I think in the near future that has to do with that. I mean, I grew up in Staten Island,
Mhm.
and that's the one place that doesn't have distilleries right now. But if you look in a lot of history books, it talks about how Staten Island, the very first distillery in America in 1640, was on Staten Island,
Yes.
and so that's sort of the when you were talking to Ralph about how you need to tell a story with that came to mind, and there's more to that too, so if we could partner up and if we got in with the right distillery that was interested, there's an opportunity there for tourism on Staten Island, I think.
There are many opportunities, but it's really just sitting and figuring out the details. I think, but then again, that's life.
Yeah.
There are a lot of opportunities that this industry has really opened up for New York people in New York State. Period.
Mm-hmm.
It's we just need to bridge some of these gaps a little bit because right now I feel like the distance is an issue. The distance is a really big issue for a lot of individuals, and that is really I feel like that's a sidebar conversation that we need to have because that could be a whole other half an hour.
Mm.
Just figuring out how can we get from point A to point B in a really cost effective way.
Well, this is so cost effective. It's a free liquor license, for Pete's sake. Yeah, I mean, you could open a bar or you could open a field office, or what's the technical term? You know?
So along those lines, yes, sure, sure.
Um,
A lot to talk about.
and I think it was Ralph also that said, the laws will tell you exactly what you can do,
Yes,
and so you can do. It'll tell you exactly what you can do.
sure, sure. And
Um,
stay within that, you'll be pretty safe.
yeah.
But yeah, and they're still evolving, and I do feel as though this is a time where for those things, there are still a few laws that are in place that are not the most helpful and constructive, quite frankly. Lord knows I've put in my share of calls to the SLA regarding that. But it's a very good time to have the conversations to have those things shifted and adjusted. So
Mhm.
much has already been adjusted to be more accommodating. So once we keep going in that direction, it's going to be a great day for everybody. I
Awesome.
hope me included.
Yeah, me too.
For sure.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's stay in touch for sure. And
Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
thank you. And I'll let you know when it's posted. It'll be a few weeks.
Awesome. Take care. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Cheers.
Bye bye.
Bye. Oh, Heather, you gonna you recorded that? Yeah.
I hope I did. I'll tell you in a second. It says yes for 43 minutes and 10 seconds.
Perfect.
We'll stop recording right now, and then I'll do like a
Dropbox or
Dropbox.
awesome.
Because
Dropbox is perfect.
okay, I'm going to name it right now, and I'll get it to you.
That's great.
Excellent.
Yeah, the audio wasn't very good on this side, so I'm glad you were able to record that.
Well, I hope it.
What did you use?
Saving it exactly what you had said to go
QuickTime?
into. No, it was the sound recorder.
Oh, you
When-
use a PC then.
Yes, yeah.
Perfect.
So I mean, you sound great on this end, but yeah, we'll see. Hopefully that works out well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if I can marry these two files, it'll sound like we're in the same room.
Okay, done.
Awesome. All right. Thank you again.
There, and I'll send this to you shortly.
Perfect.
Okay, take care. Bye bye.
Bye now.